Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to MUFC versus everybody. I am your host, Sean. Wanted to go live today for the roundup and for my three thoughts on United versus Coventry in the FA Cup semifinal. I know yesterday, I do my initial reaction. We're all kind of caught up in our feelings. We're all kind of riding the emotional highs and lows coming off that roller coaster. And with United, it's the highs are few and far between. And the lows have reached some very dark, very abysmal lows. But it's all part of it, right? This is football. I read there's an old proverb that says all sunshine and no rain only makes a desert. And while it'll be great to get some sunshine now and then, right? Because only rain and no sunshine only floods. But I think you do have to take the good and the bad. It's not, a video game where you can win every match, where everything is guaranteed. It is what it is. And again, context is key. We are very far behind right now as a club. So before we jump in, don't forget to hit the like video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new. And don't forget to get involved in the chat if you want to share your thoughts, give your reactions to things, make any comments as we cruise along. Today we're going to be starting off with a bit of the roundup, and then we'll go into my three thoughts. Yesterday we did a reaction, and then we kind of gave some odds and ends. So we will dive right into what's been going on in United and a little bit in football in general. So let's get stuck in. So we're going to touch on this a little bit later, but I'm seeing guys like Jamie Carragher and Samuel Luckhurst chime in with their calls for Ten Hag to be sacked again, right? Surprise, surprise. The ex-Liverpool player and the journalist who was banned from United pressers and called out for basically spouting nonsense are a little bit bitter after United get to another FA Cup final. So I admit yesterday that the performance was not at all good, and how we completely fell apart in that 70th minute. There's not acceptable. It's not okay, and it is worrying, and it doesn't fill anybody with confidence facing City again in this consecutive final. But we're still in the final for a second season in a row, and it's just weird at United. You can get called to be sacked for making it to cup finals. It's completely baffles me sometimes. But to call him for him to be sacked, saying this isn't enough, I think he's gone. Like, it's a bit odd. You almost have to just tune it out at this point, right? You just kind of have to accept that this is what life is at United. This is what life is as a United fan. This is what you're going to get from bidders in punditry or bidders in the media. It's just the way it is. I will add, though, that Anthony's celebration at the end was a bit cringe, if I'm honest. I mean, and we'll touch upon that a little bit more later, but I mean, have a bit of shame, right? Clap for the fans in attendance, but get to the dressing room. Just shut up, congratulate Hoyland, clap for the away fans, but get to the dressing room, get on the bus, get home, rethink your life, basically, for a lot of these United players at the moment. So speaking of making it to the cup final, though, there's some fun facts about United's recent FA Cup form. So we are the first team in FA Cup history to reach 2 consecutive finals via 2 consecutive penalty shootouts. So it's an interesting bit of information, right? A little bit of trivia, but it is kind of a bummer stat because it also means we failed to finish the job in 120 minutes or 90 minutes for 2 consecutive years. So it's a bit of a bittersweet statistic, but it is a statistic nonetheless. And like Ten Hag said, we made it to 2 finals in 2 years, and that's a big achievement, and it's nothing to be ignored. People are using it's so backwards, right? Like, I've had people got a dog hair in my mouth. I've had people criticize me and calling me a transfer fan because I watch other leagues and other players. Somehow having knowledge is somehow something that a stick to beat me with. It's just like this situation. Somehow making it to a final is a stick to beat a manager with. It makes zero sense to me, but it is what it is. And on a more positive note, both our women's teams and our men's teams have made it to their FA Cup finals 2 years in a row. So again, you have to make time for the positives in life. They are there, and they're a little harder to see, a little harder to absorb and internalize, but they are there. You have to get your minds into that balanced state of reminding it that there are positives. It's not all bad. It's like an analogy I'll share with clients sometimes is, you know, in terms of making time for the positives and reminding yourself of positives, it's like when people are house hunting. Oftentimes, if you watch any of the house hunting TV shows, or even if you've been house hunting, oftentimes it's very easy because of the stress and the kind of the frustration and kind of just the exhaustion that comes with this situation. But people walk into a house, and it's very easy to point out things that they don't like. And more often than not, the things that they don't like, the negatives, are things that can very easily be changed, whether it's a wall color, furniture, or landscaping, or whatever. Those things can change, but you have to force yourself to point out some positives when you walk into a room. Oh, look at the natural light. Look at this, the layout. I really like that. Oh, look at the yard. It's a beautiful yard. The neighborhood is super quiet, a lot of nice trees. Like, those are the kind of things you want to remind yourself of. So if you are finding yourself in a bit of a slump sometimes, good practice when you walk into a room, when you're driving to work, whatever you're doing, just try to point out things that you like, just something for thought. Again, nothing I say is professional advice. Please don't take it as such, but just a little bit of food for thought. So make time for the positives and remind yourself that they are there. A little bit more chat on their semifinal. It kind of doesn't paint us in a positive light. There's some footage going around on social media right now from just outside Wembley that shows like dozens and dozens of United fans who had left the stadium after Coventry, their fourth goal in that 121st minute. The footage shows all these fans running back into the stadium after learning a few moments later that the goal was ruled out for offside. It's just, oh man, face slap, right? It's funny too, because like I said yesterday, I was at Loaded Dice Brewery yesterday watching the match with the Detroit Red Devils supporters group. Big up Loaded Dice, big up Detroit Red Devils. So one guy there, one United fan there, kind of did the same thing when the goal went in. He kind of freaked out, went super rage, and then left. Saw him speeding out of the parking lot, going home. He couldn't handle it anymore. Fast forward 10, 15 minutes after the final whistle had gone and everything was gone. We'd won, whatever. A few of us were kind of hanging out, chatting about the match, giving our thoughts on things. And who comes coming back? But this guy, he comes back. And, he obviously took the L a little bit there. But it's just funny. You have to laugh, right? It's just, again, positives, make time for them. We saw some VAR controversy in several matches this week. VAR controversy? What? No. Yeah, I know, right? So I have seen some people claim that Coventry's goal was onside. Come on. It's a bit bitter. But then we've also seen, like, I didn't watch the entirety of the city, but I did see some footage of that Grealish handball that was not given. The pen was not given for that. But the thing today I wanted to talk about, so Nottingham Forest were apparently, I did not watch this match, were apparently denied 3 potential pens in their 2-0 loss to Everton. And as a result of that, in response, Forest have posted kind of a defiant statement on Twitter, or X, after the match. And so Forest said, 3 extremely poor decisions, 3 penalties not given, which we simply cannot accept. They continue and say, we warned the PGMOL that VAR for that match was a Luton fan before our game, but they didn't change him. Our patience has been tested multiple times. Nottingham Forest Football Club will now consider its options. So it does sound like maybe we haven't heard the end of this situation. And this could be Forest kind of still being a little upset about some of the charges and some of the fines and point situations. Kind of looking and kind of maybe even being a little bit pedantic when it comes to certain things, but at the same time, we know that it's not VAR. It's easy to say VAR and kind of give it this non-personable, identity and just say VAR. VAR is a referee. It's video assistant referee. It's a person, and the problem is the standard of refereeing. Not the calculator's fault, right? It's the person. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think again, I think the issue with VAR is just the consistency or the lack thereof. We've seen situations given almost in the same match weeks, even across different match weeks by the same officials that are just they directly contradict each other. And then you have, Ref Watch, which basically is just a bunch of former refs or officials waffling and deflecting and hypocrisizing themselves about all these random decisions, or just flat out refusing to comment because they know they can't, the argument has no legs to stand on. So again, as always, if you see my Twitter account, the pinned tweet is just a hashtag scrap VAR. If you want to share and echo those sentiments, if you want to kind of demand that the standard be raised and that things are not fit for purpose and it needs to be addressed, keep hashtagging scrap VAR. Let's get it going. So we also got some comments from Sir Jim yesterday, potentially hinting at Ten Hag's United future. So speaking on United's kind of restructure behind the scenes, Sir Jim has said, one of the problems in football is you get these new guys that come into the team, really capable people, but they're all on gardening leave. And so it takes you 6 months to a year or even 18 months before they can join. It's a real issue. He continues, the fans are impatient. I agree. I have some sympathy with that, but it's a journey. Whether they like it or not, they have to be a bit patient. It's not a light switch. You can't just turn it on like that. So could this be referring to the manager? We've being patient. He says, 6 months to a year, even 18 months. Ten Hag's only been here like a little more than 18 months. So if 18 months is not long enough in one regard, I don't think it's long enough in a different regard. And it kind of sounds like Sir Jim kind of understands that. Add to that too, we have heard him say in the past that the chaos behind the scenes at United is more to blame for what's been going on in the last decade than the managers who have kind of come and gone. So again, adding a bit of context to it, it is a bit interesting, his comments. So be interesting to see what happens this summer. It's going to be a really important summer in a lot of ways, and I don't think that fans need to prepare themselves, for the fact that everything that needs to be addressed and changed and improved and rebuilt is not going to happen in one summer. It's not even going to, even if you focused on just the squad, the getting rid of some players and bringing new ones, even that is not going to happen in one summer, the necessary changes. Add to that, stadiums, team structure, potentially manager, got to be patient. It's not all going to happen overnight, and expecting it to is just a bit naive, a bit unrealistic, and a bit unfair. And so it's a very easy way to set yourself up for disappointments, a very easy way to give yourself some, fuel for an agenda, whether this player out, this manager out kind of thing. So hone your expectations, add a bit more realistic to it, and I think you will be in a much even-keeled place mentally and emotionally as a United fan. So finally, for the roundup, a little bit of transfer talk. Caught Offside is reporting that Manchester United have joined the race for Bayern Munich starlet Jamal Musiala. So Musiala has yet to agree to a new contract with Bayern, which has made him a highly coveted target for a lot of big clubs. So I know City have been heavily linked with him, but now we're being linked with him. I like Musiala a lot. I think he's a really good player. His link-up play in the final third is great. He's excellent dribbling qualities, like one of the best young players I've seen with the ball at his feet in a while. And he just moves. He causes a lot of problems because he's constantly moving and getting involved. And we need that. We need someone like that. I think a player like him against a stubborn defense, like we've seen in a couple of recent matches for United, could really help us unlock. Because it's not enough to just keep hoping for a cross in the box or a dink ball over the top. We need players who can pass and move. We had a player like that in Donny van de Beek, and so it's be interesting to see if anything's different with this. But we want quality and depth, but it would be odd to see United sign Musiala after literally a year after signing Mason Mount, and while we have Bruno here. I don't think you have room in your squad to adequately manage three similar players. So maybe if we receive an astronomical offer for Bruno, I could see us maybe making some changes in that regard. It would probably take a big offer though. But right now, a number 10 probably wouldn't be my priority. And I wouldn't say that Mount would have been a priority for me last summer either. And so that's another thing that Ten Hag is it's those little decisions, right? Sometimes they can have big ramifications. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, though. So that's it for the roundup. Let's move on to my 3 thoughts on the match. They're going to seem kind of similar. It's going to seem kind of intertwined. Some of it's going to seem kind of repetitive, what we said before, and it might sound a little bit like I'm waffling here and there, and all of that might be true, but just bear with me. It's hard to pull a whole lot from that result and that performance other than it was garbage. But we want to add a little bit more of an analysis aspect to it. So bear with me. So number one, Ten Hag can't win. Even when he wins, he can't win, right? It feels like he's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't these days as a manager. And part of that is what you get as a United manager. It is what it is. People will say one day they want a style of play. People will say the next day they want trophies and wins. And people will say they want exciting football. Like, you can't have everything. It would be great if you could. You can't. I don't know many teams that do, quite honestly. Maybe Madrid, but even City. How many times have people watched City and said this match is boring? Pep's football is boring. Yes, it's boring, but they get results. Yes, they have 115 charges, but it doesn't change the fact that they have good players in their squad, and they win things. So you can't have everything. It's just the way it is. It'd be great, but you can't. And so you have to pick which one you want. And in some circumstances, again, context is key. You have to sacrifice one for the other, especially right now. So United are going to have to sacrifice, in my opinion, style of play, exciting football, in favor of trying to get results. We're going to have to know what we're getting into with City. Don't try to play out from the back. Try to hit them on the counter and get a result that way in the final. It's a one-off game. Anything can happen, yes. I'm not confident, but anything can happen. And you do have to kind of throw a lot of form and tactics out the window sometimes in that regard. So I'm not going to rehash a lot of the criticism Ten Hag has received this year, and just trying to keep it isolated to the match if I can. But what I mean when it's specifically right now is I'm talking about a lot of the backlash that he's gotten from the collapse that we saw from United around that 70th minute, and particularly the people blaming the substitutions. So I don't understand this. I think that at 3-0 up in an FA Cup semifinal against championship side, I'm not trying to disrespect Coventry, but let's just put the facts out. When you're 3-0 up in the 66th minute, and that's when he made his first sub, you should be able to make those subs at that time and trust the players to see out the result with minimal management, minimal instruction, minimal tactical input. Like, how hard is it, honestly, to keep the ball and be smart and just stay switched on? Again, you've got a team full of full internationals like Bruno, Rashford, Dalot, Maguire. These guys are international players. We've got Champions League winners in the side as well in Casemiro. But they just can't ever see out a result. And we've seen it throughout the year, not just yesterday. And even Ten Hag remarked after the match yesterday that we lack discipline. And I agree. There's a lot of things we lack, and discipline is definitely one of them. I think too many people are taking correlation and saying it is causation. Their correlation is not causation. Too many people are looking at subs, conceding goals, and then saying, well, Ten Hag is the cause. And it's just not the case. Ten Hag takes off Garnacho, who was a bright spark. I admit he was bright. He was causing a little bit of problems. And then we concede after he does that. But for some reason, that's Ten Hag's fault. Ten Hag takes off Menu, and we concede a goal a few minutes later. So it must be Ten Hag's fault. Like, oh, he took that Menu off, so that must be why we conceded. Like, why is taking off Garnacho the reason we conceded? Garnacho's an attacker. And then the funny thing is, if he hadn't made those substitutions and Garnacho and Menu had stayed on, would we still have conceded? And if we still would have conceded, or if maybe, knock on wood, they picked up injuries, the narrative then would have been, well, why didn't he make changes? Why is he running these players into the ground? That's why I mean he can't win. Any manager in that situation would probably have done the same thing. You have your good players, you got an injury crisis. We're up 3-0. We're heading in the 7th minute. Make some subs, get some fresh legs on, This should be fine. Even if they score, they should be fine still. Not only should these players be able to see out this result, but Ten Hag has to manage this fitness amidst a crazy injury crisis. These players seem to be made out of glass, whether that's their bodies or their minds. It's just they're so fragile right now, and we can't afford not to rotate in situations like that. I'm curious to hear what the critics of those subs would have done other in that same situation. I think that people need to remember that the phrase "I told you so" is the slogan of hindsight. Okay, I'll say that again. "I told you so" is the slogan of hindsight. Food for thought. So number 2, you guys are gonna laugh. Number 2, Ten Hag deserves criticism. I know, right? I know what you're gonna say, Sean. You just sat there and defended Ten Hag. Yes, but I defend him when it's necessary, and I criticize him when it's necessary. What I don't do is a blanket criticism for everything that goes wrong. And this applies to Ten Hag, this applies to the players, this applies to the owners too, because the owners aren't out there missing chances. The owners aren't out there making bad passes. The owners aren't making substitutions. Ten Hag is not fluffing his lines. Ten Hag is not falling asleep in defense. When it's necessary and when it's justified, yes, point the criticism where it goes. But too many people want to take criticism like it's a grenade and just throw it and let it hit everybody. And we need to just be fair and justified with it. So I didn't say that Ten Hag isn't to blame for everything. I said blaming Ten Hag because we conceded 3 goals after he made subs was a bit of a stretch and a little bit unfair. However, I've never shied away from criticizing Ten Hag when he deserves it. Same as players, same with owners. It's not his fault necessarily we conceded those goals, but there is an issue, however, when it comes to how many late goals we concede and how frequently we collapse when we're trying to see out a result. We can't play like we did yesterday. We can't play like we've been playing, in those dying minutes against City in the final. We can't play like we did all match yesterday against City in the final. It was lethargic. It was a bit sloppy. It was hesitant. It was just a bit timid. And a lot of our passing was not good. It's like we just switched off. And that's something that the manager needs to manage. If we play like that in the final will be over almost before it starts. I said in my preview of the Coventry match that I thought Coventry were going to sit deep and counter. I'm not anywhere near a professional, obviously, in terms of management, playing, match analysis, anything. I'm not anywhere near that. But it doesn't take a full UEFA badge to do a bit of prep and know what to expect from Coventry and plan accordingly. Obviously, they were happy to sit deep and try to hit us on the break. I thought that when they got the ball, maybe they would move a little bit more forward because they have in the past. With the ball, they will switch the 3 at the back and push more players forward. Without the ball, they do drop deeper. I thought we would have a bit more opportunity to hit them on the counter if we won the ball back in our half. That didn't happen as much. Because we were very slow on the ball, because we were taking a lot of touches, they were able to get back into their shape and put 10 men behind the ball very, very quickly, which kind of negates our attackers in many ways. We can't unlock a defense like that with players like Rashford. He needs space. He takes a bad touch. He takes a heavy touch. He tries to take on many defenders instead of moving the ball, instead of playing the smart pass. And he often runs the ball out of play. And it's just, it's not good. We need some, and oddly enough, a player like Sancho in that situation will probably have been better. Someone who's, I look at wingers, and I've said this a couple times before. I kind of put wingers in two different categories. I call them face forward wingers and face inward wingers. Your face forwards are like your Dan James, your Rashfords. Once you get their heads down, they get along the touch line, and they look straight ahead. And then you have your face inwards, who are kind of more like your playmakers, like your Anthonys, your Sanchos, those kind of guys. And we have a lot of face forwards. We have Anthony, who is a face inward, but he's just not quality enough to face inward. And oddly enough, Anthony tends to have caused more problems for the opposition when he does actually try to take on this man and get the ball to the byline and put it in the box. And so I don't think that I did think that Rashford would have been good against their defense, like I said, but because their defense is a little slow, the low block is not the situation for him, and we saw that again. And this is where Ten Hag deserves criticism. A little bit of prep, would go a long way. A little bit of a tactical shift. Having to bench some of these players who aren't performing these are the kind of decisions that can make or break him. I think that persisting with these certain players could cost him his job. Persisting with Antony, starting Rashford when clearly his mind is not in it, could be costly. Antony, I don't think is just good enough. Kind of like Lindelof, nothing personal. I just don't think the league suits him, and there's nothing wrong with that. Not everyone's cut out for the Premier League, and that's not me saying the Premier League is the best league. It's very different. It's very physical. You aren't going to get as much grace from refs in certain situations, and you do have to raise your game to be a little faster, a little stronger to compete. And I don't think Lindelof and Antony in particular can do that. No physicality, which isn't his fault, like I said. But I also think that yesterday specifically, the way Antony celebrated, full Emi Martinez settings after that shootout, I think maybe he lacks some mentality and definitely some maturity to be a United player. Discernment in a situation like that is very important, and I don't think that the way he did that was the way you'd want a player representing the badge. Personally, show a bit of grace, show a bit of shame, and a bit of respect. You can celebrate, but that way was not ideal. I think Rashford needs to be benched. Sticking with Rashford when he's just doesn't look like he can be bothered. Rashford needs to sit down for a bit, have a look. I think Rashford's burned out. Personally, I think he's been burning the candle at both ends for several years. I don't think that the injuries have helped. Remember he had that lingering issue that in his back he prolonged addressing because he wanted to go to the Euros. And I think things like that are just, you can't do all this at once. And I think he's burned out. And it doesn't help that we've had so much football with the World Cup, the Euros, friendlies, all of it. I think that he carries a lot of the load, and I think that he needs to be able to be benched now and then. And yesterday, particularly because of his mentality. I wouldn't have started Rashford in this match personally, but that's just my preference. But again, it is a tricky one because we have so many injuries, and Ten Hag has limited options, right, when it comes to a squad, and he's got to try to manage minutes amidst all these injuries. But that's part of the job. We've seen it with a lot of other clubs, with their injuries. You have to try to manage and still find a way to get a result. And it is what it is. It works out nicely for some of these other clubs because their plan A usually is counterattack. And so there's not much of a change. When your plan A, though, like a Ten Hag, is a high press, high transition, building out from the back, that is very player focused, it's a little difficult. But again, Ten Hag needs to adjust. He has the players to kind of play a different style. He just is refusing to do it. So injuries, again, they're not his fault, but manage is also a verb, kind of like parent is also a verb. You have to do stuff. There's action required. And Ten Hag needs to figure it out because that is the job. Number 3, the players are letting us down. And again, it sounds a little repetitive, and a lot of this is going to overlap, but it is what it is. So Rashford was booed off the pitch yesterday. Let that sink in. Højlund, whether it's a lack of confidence, maybe it's rust because he was injured for a while and it's been a while since he's got a goal. Højlund failing to take that chance off his right foot. I mean, is that confidence or what? But that's an issue. He's letting himself down. He's letting us down. Again, one too many touches in the final third. People not being quite confident to take responsibility, to take someone on. There were plenty of opportunities to play like overlap players. There were plenty of opportunities to take on a man in space, and people were just quick to stop, play it back, be careful, which is fine in some situations, but the opportunity is there. You might as well need to take it. It's one thing to force something that isn't there. It's another to take advantage of an opportunity. And then we get to the defending that we saw from us late in the second half. Again, just completely switched off. Aaron Wan-Bissaka has given away 2 penalties in recent weeks because of just poor defending, poor decisions in our box. So going to ground in one situation, which I do still think was a soft penalty, but still shouldn't be going to ground in that situation. It's lazy defending. How many times are we going to criticize Casemiro for doing that, or Anthony for doing that? It's lazy, last ditch, switched off defending. And so then yesterday again, we saw him coming in and close down an opponent with the ball in the box, and his arms are way out here. It's like, what are you doing? You're what, 25, 26 now? Like, put your arms down when you're coming to do that, man. Like, it's just you should, again, this is kind of stuff like why is that on Ten Hag? We conceded that penalty because of Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Ten Hag shouldn't have to tell, no manager should have to tell a professional athlete, professional footballer in that situation to keep your arms down. Shouldn't have to tell anyone that. This is day one stuff. Shouldn't have to tell a player, don't go to ground in the box. Like, why does Ten Hag have to do that? Did the players, when they were 6 years old, did their coaches not tell them that? Is that who's to blame? Like, this is ridiculous. The shootout, again, was just another display of mental weakness, and I've already talked about it a little bit, but with Casemiro, if you looked at his face, again, it looked like he wanted to be anywhere else but that match in that moment. He looked like he would rather be anywhere else in the world. He just had this kind of look on his face, and I knew it. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I knew it when I saw that look that he was going to miss that penalty. And the penalty itself was one of the weakest pens I've ever seen anybody take. Like, it was abysmal. And then you got Anthony's celebration, which was embarrassing. And aside from Eriksen, who went to congratulate Højlund when he scored the last one, the rest of the players just looked ashamed. They just looked almost like, oh, God, I'm glad that's over, kind of thing. And I get it. A lot of us feel the same way. And they should feel ashamed and embarrassed, rightfully so. That was a crap performance, and I hope that they realize that and they take a hard, long look in the mirror. But, it's just, we don't deserve to be in the final, but we're in the final. Again, like last season, we overachieved, yes, but we achieved nonetheless, and you can't take that away. You don't get to take away what we did last year just because we, by odds and probability, we shouldn't have done it. We still did it. So you don't get to take it away and then somehow use that as a stick to beat Ten Hag with. Shouldn't be in the final. The players have a lot to answer for, but we're still there, and we need to regroup and prepare as best we can. It was a poor performance yesterday, and they know it. Furthermore, players have been putting in these kind of displays for months. This season, particularly this last month, has felt like a carbon copy of Mourinho, of Ollie, of Rangnick. Just the players kind of just letting their foot off the gas, switching off a bit. There's no resilience. Resilience is a tricky thing. Again, you can go check out one of my articles that I wrote when I was with StreadyNews.com on resilience. There's like momentary resilience kind of in a match when you make a mistake or when you concede a goal, but then there's long-term resilience. How do you deal with injury crisis over the course of a season? How do you deal with some performance struggles over the course of the season? And I think our players just have shown in both of those ways that they can't hang. They're not mental enough, and they don't have the mentality. And people will blame Ten Hag, saying, we don't have tactics, but 18 months is not long enough. I tell a lot of people, two things that can help develop and progress and heal a lot of issues are time and effort. With time and effort, you can see a lot of change, but it needs both. You can't have it without both. Not even 2 years into Ten Hag's tenure, and it's not time at all. That's not enough time to see the kind of changes that we want to make. And considering what we've won, I would say it's impressive what he's done. Whether the players either can't deal with tactics like we've seen, like I've discussed with other tactical managers, or they just won't. Either way, it's a mentality issue. You can't say that a manager's philosophy isn't working if the players aren't giving it time and they aren't putting it in the effort. It's just, if you're not putting in the effort, you can't fairly say that it's not working because you never gave it a chance. Effort without time, cool, I tried it once, it didn't work, well, now I give up, I'm done with it. Well, that's not how it works either. You have to give it both. And so when you get some fit players, we've seen how we can play. The style is there. A lot of our players just can't do it. Or we saw against Chelsea, they just won't. Ten Hag's on the touchline telling players to calm down, keep the ball on the floor, pass it. And it just breaks down when it gets to certain players. And I've said this before, and I don't like having to repeat myself, but when we see repeated performances, the same issues, it's hard not to repeat yourself. So, and it's many of the same players that have, as Keane's called them, bluffers. They throw one manager under the bus, they'll do it for another. It's just a lot of the same players that have been doing it for years, and they've been getting, because they don't care. There's no accountability, unless you really, really love the club and you really want to play for the club. What motivation is there? The club can tell you go play someplace else. Another club will come in for you, go play someplace else. A lot of these players will outlast the managers at any club. It's just the way it is. We have to get United back to a place where, unfortunately, players want to come here because they know they're going to win because, like City or Madrid or Bayern Munich. We're not there. And yes, we are the biggest club in the world. And yes, we have a prestigious history, but look at how much of that was kind of derailed and left behind over just the last decade since Sir Alex left. We have a lot of catching up to do. We have been left behind. We have made poor decisions, and it has cost us, and it has set us back many, many years. Every time we sack a manager, it sets us back because we've got to reassess the whole players and squads and tactics and everything, and it's not working. So I'm not saying Ten Hag is the best manager we've ever had. I'm not saying that he's the one who's going to lead us to trophies. I'm saying I don't know, but 2 years is not enough time. The fact that all these other managers have been sacked, and somehow we think that sacking them, when Ten Hag was the guy that everybody wanted when we were in the same situation almost 2 years ago, and now we're in the same situation again, and somehow it's still the manager. Like, it doesn't make sense. Make it make sense. He shares a lot of the blame, Ten Hag, but the players have blood on their hands as well. And I think that, like I've done today, point the criticism at Ten Hag where it's deserved, point the criticism at players where it's deserved. Everybody shares the load, and they need to be held accountable. Yes, we can demand better, but it doesn't mean that you automatically want someone to be sacked or sold or anything. But we'll go from there. When it comes to maintaining focus, mental strength, and resilience, there's a serious problem at this club. Yes, Ten Hag needs to find a way to get his team to manage these games better, but it's not that simple or easy just to say that, he needs to do it. Like, each player is different. They make mistakes. They choose to ignore instruction, like we saw against Chelsea. It doesn't matter who's on the touchline at that point. Ten Hag isn't on the pitch. He needs his senior players to self-manage and lead and make wise decisions. All you can do is train and tell them, have a halftime talk, try to shout instructions from the touchline, and hope that the players can pull it off. We've just seen that they can't or they won't, like I've said. Where does that line lie, though, between player and manager? How much of it is player performance and how much of it is the manager's fault when it comes to situations like these? These are questions to think about, questions to talk about, questions to ask ourselves, questions hopefully Ten Hag and these players are asking themselves. Are the players putting in an honest effort? Are the fans giving Ten Hag enough time? Is Ten Hag willing to relinquish a lot of that control and lose a lot of that stubbornness in this needs-must situation at the tail end of the season? It's going to be, I doubt that Sir Jim and Wilcox and everybody involved who were in attendance yesterday will look at that performance and think it was good, especially, the 75th minute onward when we started conceding those goals. I doubt that they'll find anything a positive takeaway from that. Trying not to think too much about what Ten Hag says in his post-match presser, because any manager is going to say the same things no matter what happens. If again, it's one of those damned if he does, damned if he doesn't, because he looks for the positives, Ten Hag, and he's naive, he's full of it. If he pulls out the negatives, then it's a bully. He stone plays under the bus. Like, what do people want? And you can't please everybody. I'm sure that behind the scenes, similar to Ollie, he's letting the players know exactly how he feels, and the players can't handle the fact that they did not perform, then that's on them. But, if there's a lot of takeaways, a lot of adjustments that need to be looked at. But it's just, again, it's the same thing we've been saying over the last several months, almost the entire season. We'll see what happens. We got Sheffield United on Wednesday. I will be back tomorrow to kind of preview that, and then we've got Burnley this weekend. We've got another cup final we're going to prepare for towards the end of next month. It's going to be a big one. I hope that we can see a better performance in that than we did last season. Last season, that was embarrassing, conceding a goal like the first 10, 11 seconds. So those are my 3 thoughts on the match. Those are the odds and ends as we kind of wind down from that semifinal match yesterday. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what your reaction is to the match. Let me know what your thoughts are on Ten Hag, the players, ownership, and we'll go from there. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to go check me out, MUFC versus Everybody on Twitter, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.